surprised you didn't go with our girl.
Which one? God, she's crazy. Welcome into the Ben Burnett Show. My name is Ben Burnett. Today, we have no guests. We're going to pontificate on everything under the sun that has happened over the last 30 to 45 days. There's no guests, so I can speak freely about people that have come in here and gone. I don't have to be respectful to them, even though I probably won't be disrespectful to them. We're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about where the city has been over the course of the last year, where it's going. We are going to talk about election results. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's inability to see the writing on the wall. We're going to talk about schools, where we think that's going, and we're going to talk about how fast we think a vaccine gets rolled out into the country and how they're going to plan to do that. And I wouldn't be remiss if I wouldn't take time and pay homage to my friends at Fulton County who can't ever seem to get anything right, especially when it comes to elections. So starting off, over the course of the last year, City Council's been faced with mask mandate or to not have a mask mandate. Would it have mattered? Would it have not mattered? For those of you that don't know, it was a 4-3 vote not to implement. In complete transparency, I was the person who asked if we should consider this, and then subsequently down the road voted against it. But the governor had rolled out what he thought the cities and counties had the ability to do and what they couldn't circumvent. He was going to lose. The governor, Brian Kemp, lost a lawsuit with the city of Atlanta. Well, he was going to lose a lawsuit with the city of Atlanta when they rolled out their mask mandate and the state said that they didn't have the right to do it. So he got in a big fight with our neighbor to the south, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, had his judicial team on the hook, and then he sued her in Fulton County Court, which is probably about the dumbest place you could try to sue the mayor of Atlanta. And so ultimately it worked out where he gave guidelines where we couldn't do it. I'll be 100% honest with you. I think you should wear a mask. I have mine here. I think you should go everywhere to take all the precautions necessary to protect yourself, your family, friends, people you come in contact with. But by and large, it was my belief that the business community took it upon themselves, given the guidelines that they had, to reduce occupancy into buildings, space people far enough apart so that the risk of spreading the virus was a little bit less than it otherwise would have been. If you go to City Hall, if you go into plenty of buildings, you go to restaurants, people take your temperature now, and they go to as great a lengths that they have the ability to do to keep people safe. What's interesting also about Georgia's lack of a desire to do that was if you moved one state west into Alabama, they did have a mask mandate everywhere. And the underlying theme was that we were not going to stop football season. So at least if they were going to roll a mask mandate to their entire state, they did it for the right reasons. Nothing in the South is more important than football in the fall. But as we sit today on November 20th, it is expected that the largest number of people in the country to test positive for coronavirus is going to have a record-setting number today and tomorrow. I cannot imagine that going out into Thanksgiving and coming into contact with people that you don't usually see without the usual physical distancing requirements. I think you're going to see that number mushroom cloud. I don't see myself as somebody who would ever vote in favor of a mask mandate, not because of science. I think the science suggests you wear one for no other reason that I believe it's a civil liberties argument. And I don't care what you are, who you worship, who you go to bed with. I don't think it's the government's responsibility to ever tell you that you should or shouldn't wear something or force you to. And to me, of the 4 people who voted against a mask mandate, I thought it was the only defensible argument that there was, because 2 people sat up there and said the science doesn't support masks. That's bullshit. It totally supports masks. If it didn't support masks, you would have doctors and nurses who didn't wear N95s when they go into surgeries, patient rooms, other things. They don't do it because it doesn't work. They do it because it's a best practice. And as you get out there and you think about it, if you're in North Fulton or downtown Alpharetta, I'm grateful that the municipalities out here, by and large, have protected that right. It's very different from our neighbors south of the river. But it's also not that their heart's in the wrong place. I don't believe it's their ability to do it. And if you look, that coronavirus for the city of Alpharetta has been something, when I ran for office, I clearly had no idea that I would sit there and make decisions right, wrong, indifferent about shutting a business down based on a virus or a global pandemic. And I don't think anybody runs for office now to, make a hard stance. It's easy to criticize it in hindsight, but that's not why anybody ran for office. They try to do the best things they can for their community, state, country, pick one. And it will be very interesting to see how places respond. If you look at California, Governor Gavin Newsom, who is the ex-husband to Don Jr.'s girlfriend, Kimberly Guilfoyle, shut the whole state down overnight. It's one of the world's 10 largest economies. It's one state in the country. And to me, you saw the Orange County Sheriff's Office say, put out on social media, on all their social media platforms last night, if you see someone not wearing a mask, please don't call us because we're busy actually doing police work and keeping people safe from crime and so forth. And we really would rather stick to the business of that. And I think it's an interesting dichotomy because if you look at North Fulton and you look at Orange County, they're largely very similar political places. Orange County is one of the more conservative areas of Southern California based on business. That doesn't mean it's a ruby red Republican state, but there's plenty of places where you can go outside and, they're not big fans of race riots and things like that. But if you look, it's also, if you get on the 5 between Los Angeles and San Diego, there's 30 million people within 5 miles of either side of that interstate. And to sit there and take 30 million people within 5 miles of an interstate and tell them that they can't do something or be somewhere or do something, to me, that is just fundamentally un-American. But what does that mean for us here? You look and see that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, lost an election. If you look all around the eastern part of the United States, and especially the South, there was only one state that managed to flip from red to blue, and that is where we live, in the state of Georgia. I think that just speaking as a registered Republican, which I don't often advertise on the Ben Burnett Show, where we have Republicans and Democrats come on alike. We're open to anybody. If you ever want to come on, just call me. Glad to have you. If you look around, you could see having ability to look a little bit on the inside. If you break it down just a little bit, half of Alpharetta and Roswell and some of Cherokee County and Woodstock belongs to the people, but it is represented by a senator named John Albers, who managed to outperform the President of the United States by almost 10,000 votes. So a state Senate seat is virtually a third of the size of a congressional district. And as you watched his polling numbers go from September and October, and knowing that the man spent $400,000 to outperform a member of his same party at the top of the ticket by 10,000 votes is a lot, especially when one of them wins by 2 points and one of them loses by 2 points. All along, his polling data suggested that the president was going to lose, and that the suburbs, especially with women, were always in play or going to be a challenge if you were down ballot and you had uninformed voters. But I think there's a tremendous amount of credit that goes to somebody like that to run a race and to show the people of the state of Georgia that you can be a Republican in the metro Atlanta area, in a highly contested area that is voted for Stacey Abrams for governor, voted for Joseph Biden for president, and that your values can still win. You can be on the right side of the aisle and still turn out good numbers. I'm going to drink some water. So if we look at that, where does the Republican Party go from here? I'd suggested on Cadillac Jack and Donna's second act a couple weeks ago before the election that I thought the president was in trouble based on knowing the data from what he has done and what the president had done or didn't. They minded how he acted. It wasn't necessarily that they disagreed with the policy, that there were policy disagreements. The president will have gone down lowering capital gains rates, lowering tax rates for a lot of Americans. You can argue the solvency of what he wanted to do, and you'd be perfectly right to do so. But people were just, the number one thing that drove suburban women especially away from the president was how he acted. He's not an incredibly conservative man. The guy's been married 3 times. He's filed bankruptcy a handful of times with other businesses. He knew how to play the game, and he gave people what they wanted to hear. And his downfall, in my opinion, will be much of the same thing that Governor Kemp will have to face in 2 years. It's that you can no longer run to rural areas and expect that to carry you over the mountain. And I hope that is what the Republican Party chooses to take away from this period in our country's history, is that the Republican Party has got to get to a place where they're willing to look at things that more moderate Republicans can get behind. If you look at the minimum wage laws in this country, it is $7.25, and it has been that way for probably 15 years, at least 10. That's something that hasn't been changed. And you can say that it's not the government's place to say that the minimum wage laws are something that should be talked about amongst it's not a decision that the government should make, and you're right to do so. But the federal government has already chosen to wade into setting the floor. So you can't sit there and all of a sudden get out of the business of setting the floor. That's one of the things that I think they should look at. I think the Georgia General Assembly, and I've got an adopted child. I'm very pro-life. But they have to quit putting bills on the floor that cause Metro Atlanta Republicans their ability to actually govern and be conservative. When you continue to roll out abortion bills that you know full well that the governor is going to sign because he's shown an ability to do so, and protecting unborn life is important to me. But if you know that bill is going to get thrown out in court, why are you putting your legislative caucus through such hell? It's so stupid. And the heartbeat bill was always going to be a divisive issue. But beyond that, it was always going to get thrown out in court. And the day that it got thrown out in court, it energized the Democrats because they said, look at what these Republicans are trying to do to you. They willingly passed something that they knew was unconstitutional and wasn't going to hold up. And I'm not arguing about how you feel. The politics of the day suggests that things like that are theology married in idiocracy. You have to play to win beyond the drive that you were on. You have to play to win for power, and you have to stay together and govern so that the next group of people behind you aren't cleaning up a mess. And I think that David Schaefer, who is the Georgia Republican Party chair and the president, don't have COVID, I promise. need to take a good long look at the issues and the places that they want to go. It is it's going to be interesting because it's my opinion that the president lost. It was my opinion 2 days after the election was over that the president lost. I think he lost some states that were pretty narrow margins. But you can be, and you are entitled and allowed to be a divisive leader when times are good. When COVID broke out in this country and the unemployment rate went from low single digits to mid-teens, you can no longer be a divisive leader because you have a significant portion of the workforce that is hurting. And by workforce, I mean citizenship. If you look back at the first 2 years of his presidency, the stock market was never higher. The Fed wasn't pumping in $3 trillion or $6 trillion into the market to keep it inflated so that Wall Street and its stakeholders were taken care of. But a lot of that doesn't matter when you don't have the ability to earn an income. I would say that the day that that he hid from COVID in hindsight and said that it wasn't a big deal was penny wise and pound foolish. It kept people together for a day on his side, but it further bridged the divide in this country because it would have been very easy for him to come out and say, I do not believe that this can cripple our economy, but if you can go out, I'm not going to tell you not to mask up, but I'm asking you to be intelligent and make good decisions because now you're in a place where there's 50 or 60 million people in California, and the governor is taking the right with a lame duck president that really doesn't have any longevity to go after him to sit down and shut down the world's 10th largest economy. It's like, did it have to be this way? And I'd contend that the answer is no. And the fact that he failed to lead when things got hard was really the undoing and the downfall. Now, if COVID hadn't happened, I think President Trump would have been reelected in spades because his divisiveness only brought more people to him than alienate him. But when he lost that, he clearly had things that he had to overcome, which brings me just a little bit to the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who everybody's kind of gone after. I think Brad Raffensperger, by and large, has done his job with respect to maintaining the integrity of the elections. Did they mislabel some ballots and piles? Sure, I think it's known. Did it cost some people their jobs in election offices? Yes. Should it have probably cost them their jobs? Also probably yes. But you have to look at it this way. I think the fact that David Perdue, Kelly Loeffler, and Raphael Warnock are in a runoff for a U.S. Senate seat, they were virtually unaffected by what happened. But if I was David Perdue, I would be furious with Brad Raffensperger because the guy got 49.9% of the vote. And Brad Raffensperger rolled out the largest absentee ballot campaign that the state had ever seen. If you look at it from this time for this presidential cycle to the governor's race, there were over 10 times the number of people who voted by absentee. And that is not an issue that favored his party, and it never was. And to roll it out in a pandemic when a lot of people were going to stay home, combined with the fact that the president told his voting base to go vote on election day, we can't trust the process. It for sure cost the president the state of Georgia. And I think it's forced David Perdue in a runoff when we woke up on Wednesday, November 4th, was going to win. And then they continued to count absentee ballots. They continued to, they had hand recounts. And what they discovered was that a libertarian had taken enough of the vote to keep him over the finish line. And if the president doesn't get out of the way and concede the election and kind of remove himself and let the base support the two Republican candidates, they're both going to lose. And the Republicans in the state of Georgia are going to be represented by two Democrats and a Democrat president and vice president. So I'm not a big fan of the president. I've spent a lot of the last 2 years being pretty critical of his short-sightedness. And I think that the best thing to happen to them is for them to get a dose of their own medicine from the first 2 years and really bring the country back to a place where the governing is just a little bit more moderate and slow and thoughtful and less. My hope is that it's less divisive, but remains to be seen. Carl, you got any questions for me? Carl never says anything. I'm still trying to get him to do it. But I do think when you look back, and I'll end here with, I'll bring it back to, things that you see in North Fulton. Municipalities and counties get ahead when times are hard because there are deals to be made. When things are blowing and going, it's hard to get a good deal on land, and every penny matters to a county or a municipal government. When you look at where you want to go, I think 2021 for the city of Alpharetta will largely be around watching the capital markets unfreeze and letting the developer that's going to redo North Point Mall make it a mixed-use development. I think that's going to be a big deal. I think there are one or two other really large anchor opportunities that give Alpharetta a chance to diversify what it has been doing over the last course of years. I think higher education is something that people are going to take a look at. I think healthcare opportunities will continue to expand. And I think that you'll see the creativity in general in the marketplace. I think that you will see in the next 12 months the city of Alpharetta roll out a bond initiative for public infrastructure improvements like the Loop. I think that you will see them or us look at what the reckoning means of the T-Splosh going away. And so for those of you that don't know, it's a consumption-driven sales tax. 0.75% of every 7.75 cents gets split amongst the 14 cities in Atlanta, or 14 cities in the county based on nighttime population. I think for a year that will go away, and it will be interesting to watch what we choose to do. If you look up and down the 5 mile stretch of North Point Parkway, it is very interesting because there are tens of millions of dollars of things that need to be done from a city perspective with infrastructure, changing some of the landscape from the roads, widening some, unwidening others, making them more walkable. See, maybe the lane sizes will come down a little bit, but there are no shortage of people that are coming to look out here at those opportunities because they've seen West Alpharetta be successful with downtown and City Hall, the park space. They've seen Avalon be successful. And so to watch a 5 mile stretch of Alpharetta turn over from strip malls and 20th century retail into co-working space, education opportunities, what the bus rapid transit that can go to North Point Mall means while all the 400 interchanges get redone over the next decade, I think really lends itself to that area being the next catalyst for growth and watching that turnover. It'll also be really interesting when the Property Tax Digest comes out for 2021, because on January 1st is what your property is assessed for the following year. And if we have record numbers of COVID cases in a deteriorating area, that doesn't lend itself for a growing tax digest for a large corridor of the city. I would like to see us take the opportunity to evaluate those projects because some of the costs will come down with a declining tax base. There are still people that will want to come out here and try their hand. And I think that it's going to be a really unique part of Alpharetta 20 years from now when it all gets done that will look nothing like the other central business district areas. And I think that has a real chance to be neat, have more of a focus on transit, have a much larger focus on walkability and trail systems than you see today in any other part of town. And it gives us an opportunity to see, with so much of that section of the city have such low price points for acquisition, you're going to have the opportunity to see people move into the city that can't afford a $700,000 house. I think that you're going to see Alpharetta get a lot younger with the projects that are coming in. I think that puts us in better position for the middle part of the 21st century because America has a aging workforce and an aging population. I appreciate the opportunity to come in here and share with you about what's going on with the election, where the city's going to go, and what's next for the great state of Georgia. You'll have a good weekend.